Hey, welcome back to the Straight No Chaser podcast. I'm your host, Bishop. This is the podcast where we say the hard things, right? With love, a little heat, and a whole lot of truth, okay? Now, today, listen, we're diving into something that, is a little deep. It is deep, and it could trigger some, right? Something, but it's been sitting on my spirit for a while, so I'm going to talk about it because I see other people talking about it, and I think it has to be addressed. We're going to talk about what happens when the applause fades. What happens when you're no longer like the it person? You know what I mean? When you're not that person that everybody's talking about, everybody wants to know what you're up to. You know? What really happens when you've built your entire identity on being liked, followed, praised, and then the world decides, we over that. We on something else now. What happens? So today we're going to talk about influence, identity, and the crash that comes when your self-worth is tied to your popularity. And yes, we're going to use some real world examples like, Nicki Minaj, Drake, Lil Wayne, people who were once worshipped by the public, but now struggling to figure out who they are without the validation. So let's get into it. So I'm going to start by saying this. Popularity, it's a drug. You need to understand popularity is a drug. And baby, it wears off faster than you think. Faster than you think. Okay? There's this illusion we buy into, right? Especially with social media and celebrity culture, right? That once you make it, you've made it forever. Nah, that's not what that means. That if millions of people love you, they will always love you. No, this is not a Whitney Houston, Kevin Costner situation. You understand? That if they're screaming your name today, they're going to be screaming it tomorrow. No, that's not how people work. That's not the reality of life. That's not how attention works. Because most people have the attention span of a gnat. So it's never going to work that way for you. Because as soon as some shiny new object shows up, they've moved on to that. Now, I'm going to give you an example. Now, look at Nicki Minaj for a moment. There was a time when she was the music industry, meaning she was on every feature. She was a part of every award show. Every outfit she wore sparked a trend. Like she was the it girl. There was nowhere that you weren't turning where you didn't see or hear Nicki Minaj. But now she's fighting with fan pages. She's fighting with that. She's running around causing old beefs. She's creating chaos. And I know me personally, I can see it. I can see the cracks, the unraveling, the going back with other women or men, the going down memory lane about I accomplished this and I accomplished that. We see it. It's unfortunate, but we do see it. Same with Drake. Drake was a whole cultural movement. Do you understand? I never quite understood how. Because, I came up on hip hop, but okay. He got some bangers. He got a couple bangers, but he's not a lyricist. But that's not the here nor there. That's not this slot. That's not this podcast. But understand his desperation to stay hot, to stay loved. That recent album cycle that he did told us everything we needed to know. The energy has shifted. And the thing is, what do you do when people shift with it? Even Lil Wayne, that man changed the rap game. There was a point Wayne was on everybody's song. You're hearing Wayne music everywhere. And then silence. He didn't just fade off the charts, he started fading from himself. Now, these people didn't prepare for the silence because they tied who they were to that noise. This is why it's important to know who you are. Now, I know some of you would say, well, that's not true. Well, no, it is true. Remember the crash out when Wayne didn't get chosen for the New Orleans Super Bowl? When you know who you are, shit like that don't affect you. Nicki crashing out, fighting people online, talking about her accomplishments, this, that, and the other. Listen, you don't do those things when you know who you are. When you don't know who you are and you're trying to prove yourself to other people, that's when you do those things. That's when you do those things. But you don't have to do those things when you know who you are. Drake shouting from the rooftops about how he's so, what they say, I'm going to say it like they say in LA, so hoard. I'm so hoard. Listen, baby, those who protest that loud gotta be as soft as cotton. Because it's just no way. It's no way. Hard people don't have to run around going, I'm hard. They don't do that. Because I think all three of them thought it would just always be. That's not the case. Because unfortunately, people ain't loyal. These people ain't loyal. Because that's essentially what it is. They move on to the next hottest and youngest thing, whatever that is. Now, here is the real problem, okay? When you don't know who you are outside of applause, then the moment that people stop clapping, you're going to feel like you no longer exist. That's what's going to happen. It's going to feel like identity theft to you. Yep. But let me keep it all the way a buck. You're the thief, though. Not the other people. You're the thief. You're the thief. You're the thief. And I say that to you because you stole your own identity and gave it to everybody else to define for you. Yeah, because see, this happens to regular people too. I know some of you may think, oh, just celebrities go through that. That's not true. Regular people do too. Every day, when we only feel pretty if somebody compliments us. That's what that is. When we only feel accomplished if somebody notices. When our mood rises and falls based on what our posts, the type of reactions they get on social media. That's exactly what that is. And when that attention slows down or stops, we spiral. We start second guessing who we are. That's why you need to be very crystal clear about who you are. I remember when I first started doing social media, like really trying to do it. And I remember I started making videos and then I wasn't getting the traction that I liked. And this was many, many years ago, and I stopped. And the excuse that I made myself was, I'm just not interested in that because I don't want people all up in my business. But what it was, in fact, was I was defined by the responses or lack thereof I got from folks. I allowed it to define me, which stood in the way of my own progress. See, a lot of times we do it and we don't even understand what we're doing to ourselves, but we're basically talking ourselves down. And I would just do that by default because I needed the external validation from someone else to tell me about how awesome I was. No, I tell me that. Anybody else telling me that is extra. That's the gravy on top. Anybody else telling me that. But me saying it, to me, That's the secret sauce. So this ain't just about celebrity. This is about survival. Because if you don't know who you are without the spotlight, you'll chase it until it burns you out. Or worse, it'll just break you. It'll break you. Y'all see Amanda Bynes? Britney Spears? That stuff will break you down. Now let's go back. We're going to go back to these other artists I talked about for a second, right? Like the Nickis and the Waynes and the Drakes and all of that. Because I don't think it's hate. I think it's grief. Like when I see Nicki doing her stuff, I don't see it as being mad. Or even Drake or even Wayne. I see it as people trying to grieve the death of their influence in real time. That's what you're watching. You're watching somebody come to terms with their reality, and they're having a hard time processing that. Like Nicki's not just mad, she's heartbroken. She's heartbroken. She made a lot of sacrifices. She did a lot of things. And now y'all don't like me. Y'all don't want me. Y'all don't find value in my art. Drake ain't just corny. He's lost. I said what I said. I said what I said. He's lost. Lil Wayne isn't just faded. He's disoriented. Listen. Because when you've been praised for years, the silence does feel like betrayal. That's what these people are used to. And when your whole worth was built on public perception, that silence becomes unbearable to you. You're used to hearing the applauses, the praises, all of that stuff. But when you don't hear it anymore, you're like, well, what the hell does that mean? You know what's worse than being unknown, though? Being known and then forgotten. That's what's worse. That's what's worse. Being known and forgotten. That's why we see folks spiral, fighting with their fans, beefing with newcomers, dropping mid projects just to stay relevant. Because it's not about art anymore. It's not about art. It's about proving you still matter. That's what it's about. And I'm telling you, that is a dangerous place to be. Extremely dangerous place to be. So what's the lesson, right? That can be learned in all of this, right? I'm going to tell you one of them. You better know who you are. You better know who you are. Not who the internet says you are. Not who your fans think you are. Not who your ex thought you were. Who you are. Because public love is temporary. Identity cannot be. Your identity can't be temporary. You got to know who you are. Because if you don't know nothing else in your life, if you have no other certainties about your life, one of them is going to be you know who you are. Because see, when you know yourself, you can handle rejection better. Somebody reject you, you go, okay, I mean, listen, I ain't for everybody. Or, oh, that's not me, that's them, I'm good. You understand? You don't fall apart when people leave because you got you. You don't measure your value by someone else's applause, y'all. You don't do that. That's the difference between being relevant and being real. Those two aren't the same thing. And I don't know about y'all, but I would rather be real. That's what I care about, being real over being relevant. Because I know that relevancy fades. What people find relevant today is not what they're going to find relevant next week, next year, next 10 years. People change. Wants and needs change. You know how I started to figure out who I was? By making mistakes. That's the honest God truth. You make mistakes in your life, you figure out who you are. My mother always used to call it failing up. It's the concept of you fail, but you learn and you get better. That's how I learned to know who I was. That's why I learned what I liked and what I didn't like by failure. That's why people who are adverse to failure, they're going to have a hard time connecting with themselves because you don't even want to fail. You're not too good to fail. You just are adverse to it because you got some other issues that you need to deal with on why you don't want to fail. See, we don't want to talk about this enough because everybody wants to look like they're okay. They want to look like it's good, but pretending you're fine while falling apart on the inside, man, that's silent hell. I'm not a fan of that. That stuff is exhausting. That's pretending. I'm good on that. If I'm gonna do acting, I need to be paid for it. I'm not about to do that level of acting. Not that I haven't, but I don't do it anymore. So let me tell you something. So if you're listening right now and you felt like people only love me or only love you when you're performing, you're constantly trying to be enough for everybody else. That's what that means. You trying too hard to be something for them, or you're terrified of being forgotten, overlooked, or left behind. I'm going to tell you something. You are not your job. You are not your follower count. You need to understand that. You're not the last mistake or even your best moment. You are still you. Even when the crowd stops cheering, you got to hear that. It's okay to want recognition. It is. I'm not saying it's anything wrong with wanting recognition. But what I am saying is don't let it replace your self-worth. Validation should be a bonus, not the battery pack that keeps you going. So before you chase attention, ask yourself, would I still love me if nobody was looking? And boom, there you have your answer. That's the real conversation you need to have with yourself. Because being so... Celebrity culture is extremely obsessive in America. But you got to be careful because between wanting all the likes and the retweets and the shares, you lose sight of who you are. Well, what I tell you, you're the most important person in your life. Don't lose sight of that. Now, I'm going to tell you something before I close out. I want to leave you with something that you need to think about. Popularity doesn't make you whole. It doesn't. Popularity doesn't make you whole. Influence doesn't even equal identity. It doesn't. If you thought it did, you were wrong. And applause is not love. It's just noise, right? Just because they're clapping don't mean they love you. Real love, real identity, that comes from you. That can't come from people external of you. That's not how that works. So you got to do your own work, baby. You got to do your own work, and it comes from you knowing yourself so well that you are unshakable, even when the world moves on. You okay with that? Okay. It is what it is because they will move on. That's the real tea. The world's going to move on whether you like it or not. But if you know who you are, this is the catch. If you know who you are, you'll still be standing. That's the other tea. That's the other tea. So thank you all for tuning into this episode of Straight No Chaser podcast. If this hit you in your chest today, share it with somebody. Send it to a friend who's struggling. Let's keep this conversation going. Let's keep it going. And don't forget, your worth doesn't come from the outside. It's been in you the whole time. Okay? So until next time, keep it real and keep it moving, you guys. Peace.